iPhone 16 Pro Max versus DJI Pocket 3, which is the better choice for content creation? Honestly, it's tough to compare these two, but if I had to pick one, I would probably go with the Pocket 3. Its gimbal provides better stabilization performance, especially in low light or when using ND filters. The low light performance is better due to the larger sensor. It has excellent tracking features and it's much easier to monitor yourself when doing selfie vlogging. However, if I were mainly shooting in a studio like I am right now, I would probably go with the iPhone because the gimbal on the Pocket 3 can be a bit finicky in a studio setting. It's much easier to connect extra accessories to the iPhone, and the slightly tighter focal length of the main camera is something I personally prefer for talking head studio shots. All in all, both of these cameras are fantastic, but they are very different, so let me share with you the pros and cons of each to help you decide which one is going to work better for you. Starting with probably the most important factor, the price. The iPhone is significantly more expensive than the Pocket 3. The Pocket 3 is $520 for the standard combo and $670 for the creator combo, which includes the DJI Mic 2, whereas the iPhone 16 Pro starts at $1,000 or $1,200 for the Pro Max version. However, these are US market prices. In most cases, iPhones cost much more in other countries. For example, where I live, I paid $1,500 for my base model iPhone 16 Pro Max, while the Pocket 3 costs $530 here. I know it's not entirely fair to compare the prices of these two, as the iPhone is not just a camera, it's also a phone and a mini computer. However, if we are just comparing the cameras, the Pocket 3 definitely offers much more value for the price, no matter how you look at it. Moving on, the main advantage of the Pocket 3 is definitely its built-in gimbal, which provides much better stabilization performance in my opinion. I did a couple of tests with the Blackmagic camera app on the iPhone using all stabilization modes, standard, cinematic and extreme, and found that the Pocket 3 produced much better results, especially in low light conditions, because unlike the iPhone, which relies heavily on fast shutter speeds for optimal stabilization performance, the Pocket 3 does not. However, this is not to say that the stabilization on the iPhone is not usable for simple handheld shots. It works just fine. It's just that when you're pushing it to the extreme, the Pocket 3 performs much better. But if you are willing to sacrifice upper-log, some resolution and field of view, you can switch to action mode, which delivers action camera-like stabilization performance on the iPhone. But again, this comes at the cost of a significant image crop, no upper-log, and a maximum resolution of only 2.8K. Moving on, I find the Pocket 3 much easier to use for slow cinematic shots because of how easily you can lock the camera in place and customize the gimbal speed, etc. And I absolutely love the active track feature, which lets you track yourself by simply double tapping on the screen. This is incredibly handy for BTS style shots or when you want the camera to follow you as you walk around in the frame. However, as good as it sounds, the main drawback of the Pocket 3's gimbal is that it's not waterproof and is quite fragile, especially compared to the iPhone 16 Pro or Pro Max, which is waterproof up to 6 meters and in my opinion will withstand drops and stuff like that much better than the Pocket 3. Now, in terms of overall usability, I find the iPhone to be slightly more complex. First of all, the iPhone is a phone, which is a downside if you are going to use it as a main camera, because there's always a chance that someone can call you or send you a message and distract you. Then, if you want to unlock the full potential of its camera, which I assume you do, you'll need to use a different third-party camera application than the stock one, like the Blackmagic camera app, because the stock one is quite limiting when it comes to camera control. However, probably the biggest downside of using the iPhone as a main camera for content creation is that there is no easy way to monitor yourself when using the rear cameras, unlike with the Pocket 3, where you can always just flip around the the camera and monitor yourself. There are workarounds like using an Apple Watch, but I don't have one, and as far as I know, it only works with the stock camera app, which I don't use at all. You can also try connecting an external monitor to the iPhone through the USB-C port, which works great by the way, but adds bulk and cost. Overall, I think if you're going to do a lot of handheld vlogging, the Pocket 3 is going to be a far better choice for you because you can easily check if you are in frame, properly exposed, etc. Whereas with the iPhone, you'll always have to guess if you're in a frame and properly exposed, since there is no easy way to monitor yourself. Another important factor to consider with the iPhone is that recording in its highest quality codec, ProRes 42 HQ, takes up a lot of space, which may force you to record on an external SSD. Personally, I rarely record in ProRes 42 HQ unless I want to experiment with it. I mostly record in HEVC with the highest possible bitrate, which doesn't take up a lot of space at all. However, if you want to achieve the absolute best results with the iPhone, you'll probably need to invest in an external SSD to increase the storage capacity. Moving on, one thing I'd like to mention in favor of the iPhone is that its USB-C port makes it extremely versatile. You can easily buy a cheap USB-C hub to expand the port selection on it, allowing you to simultaneously connect accessories like a microphone, external monitor, external SSD, and headphones, something you can't really do with the Pocket 3 except for connecting an external microphone. So because of this, I feel like the iPhone is going to be a much better choice for a talking head studio camera. I've made an entire video about this. If you want to check it out, I'll leave it up here. Anyhow, in terms of battery and power, from my experience, my iPhone 16 Pro Max delivers a longer battery life than the Pocket 3. It can easily last me the whole day if I'm not using it for much else besides filming. However, when it comes to recharging, the Pocket 3 definitely recharges much faster than the iPhone, taking about 20 minutes to go from 0 to 80%, whereas with the iPhone, it's much slower. Now, in terms of audio, first of all, you can easily connect any external microphone you want to either camera. I highly recommend using the DJI Mic 2 with the Pocket 3 as it works seamlessly with it. However, when it comes to the built-in microphones, I feel like the iPhone 16 Pro or Pro Max delivers better results. This is an audio quality comparison of the built-in microphones between the iPhone 16 Pro Max and the DJI Pocket 3 without doing any extra processing in post-production. No equalization, no compression, no nothing except for audio normalization to adjust the appropriate audio levels for each microphone, and that's pretty much it. Moving on to optics, one major advantage of the iPhone is that it has 3 lenses compared to just one on the Pocket 3. A 48 megapixel ultra-wide 13mm lens, a 48 megapixel 24mm wide lens, and a 12 megapixel 120mm telephoto lens. This offers much more versatility for capturing unique types of shots within the same scene, whereas with the Pocket 3, you are limited to a fixed wide-angle 20mm equivalent field of view. However, if you want to get the absolute best image quality from the iPhone, you should always use the 24mm lens. This lens has the largest sensor, the lowest aperture, and the sharpest image quality. In my experience, the 13mm and 120mm lenses are quite soft and not as good in low light as the 24mm lens. However, they still offer much more versatility compared to the Pocket 3 because you get more choices when it comes to choosing your focal length than with just one lens on the Pocket 3. Moving on, both can shoot in 4K at up to 120p. Both deliver fantastic low light performance, though I would give a slight edge to the Pocket 3. However, the iPhone has a couple of downsides when shooting in low light. First, its stabilization does not perform as well as the Pocket 3's, resulting in jittery artifacts, especially when doing something like handheld vlogging. But most importantly, importantly, the iPhone produces ugly looking flares from street lights, signs, etc., making it virtually unusable in low light conditions. Regardless, in terms of sharpness, both deliver a very sharp and detailed image. That is, if you're using the main 24mm lens on the iPhone. Both can shoot in log. The iPhone has Apolog while the Pocket 3 has a D-Log M. However, the difference between them is quite noticeable. First, Apolog looks more like a traditional log profile from a professional camera, whereas D-Log M on the Pocket 3 falls somewhere in between. I find Apolog to be much easier to work with in post-production, especially if you're using something like DaVinci Resolve, as you have a proper CST workflow with Apolog, whereas with D-Log M on the Pocket 3, you don't have that option. You have to either use the LUT from DJI or do everything manually. But most importantly, I find that Apolog produces much better colors straight out of the camera, especially when it comes to skin tones. The difference is quite noticeable in my opinion. In almost all the tests I've done, the skin tones on the iPhone clips look much more natural than on the Pocket 3. Just look at these clips side by side with the same camera settings and you can see how much better my skin looks on the iPhone compared to the Pocket 3. In my opinion, it's a huge difference and definitely something to consider if you are into pro color grading like myself. However, a couple of downsides I want to mention with the iPhone are that first, I find using the Blackmagic camera app a bit slower than the Pocket 3. There are just too many settings and options and I feel like I'm just much quicker to adjust my settings on the Pocket 3. Next, I find exposing Apolog to be a bit trickier than D-Log M. With D-Log M, I usually just use the EV metering and the display to set my exposure, which works fine for about 90% of cases. However, for Apolog, it's a bit more complex. My current technique is to underexpose my shots by about a stop or two and then raise the exposure in post-production. But I am now experimenting with some techniques I've seen online where people set the ISO to around 1250 or 1600 to get the widest dynamic range possible. But overall, I feel like D-Log M is slightly easier to work with and also quicker to work with than Apolog. Maybe I need to practice more, but I feel like if you are a beginner and you want to experiment with log profiles, color grading and all this stuff, you're going to have a much easier time with the Pocket 3 than with Apolog. To summarize, both cameras are fantastic, each with its pros and cons. The iPhone is definitely more versatile. It has 3 lenses, it's a phone, it's a mini computer, and honestly, I prefer Apolog over D-Log M, but I feel like you can't really beat the Pocket 3 for content creation, especially when considering the price. The best option, honestly, would be to have both, as they are so different and complement each other very well. I think the iPhone works much better as a tripod camera in a studio setting, as a backup camera, or for simple handheld shots. However, the Pocket 3 is definitely better for selfie vlogging or if you need a compact camera that can track you reliably. But honestly, if you don't really need a new phone and you have about $1,000 to $1,500 to spare, the best option would be to buy a proper mirrorless camera like the Sony ZV-E10 Mark I or Mark II, for example, or a second-hand Sony a6700, as these will deliver much better results than the iPhone. I feel like it doesn't really make sense to spend about $1,000 to $1,500 on a phone just for its camera, where you can buy a proper camera for this price and get much better results, in my opinion. Thanks for watching.